everybody, and welcome to a special ICF Academy. Today, we are partnering with the Women in Camp Summit, and Women in Camp Summit are doing a little takeover of ICF Academy. And so, just before we start, though, we always love to hear where everybody is coming from and calling from. So, please in the chat share what country you are visiting us from and maybe what camp. So hop on in there. Where are you from in the world? I have Gwynn right now, right here, but I love it. So today, for a little bit of housekeeping, we are going to be chatting with everybody. Make sure that you're on speaker mode. And if you have any questions, write us in the chat. We have Alexia and Gwen that are there. And I'm going to invite Kate to the stage because, like our last episode, we had some pretty interesting stuff.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much. So if you are a Spanish speaker or a Mandarin speaker, we have live translation available for you. The way you get to it is by clicking on the More button or whatever language your Zoom is set to, and you can click on Interpretation and select your channel for Chinese or Spanish, Chinese being Mandarin. If you would like to make sure that you are not hearing the English, then you can also select mute your original audio to hear just the interpreted language. And a big, big thank you to Robert and Luciana who are doing our live translations for us. Gabs, back to you.
Thanks, Kate. And so today we're going to get to talk about the women in our lives and who has inspired us. So in the chat, please share with you your Shero. And what is a Shero, you might ask? Well, it's a hero with the word she just in front of it. And when you name this person, if you feel comfortable naming them, uh, share with us their superpower and why they inspired you. And we'll get some good conversations going on there. So just take a moment and write down who you're. It could be more than one. I know I have many. Just in preparing for this presentation, Kate, Alexia, Gwen, Lucy, have all been my sheroes in this last week. And in my professional life, I have Jay McCutcheon. I have Jill Dundas. I have my mother, Jackie Raill. I have so many, Beth Allison, Colette, Ruby. These are all people that have inspired me, that have encouraged me, and through their own kindness and strength have created paths for me that maybe I wouldn't have felt brave enough to do on my own. Kate, if you feel comfortable, would you like to share with us some of what we are reading in the chat?
Absolutely. So we have Jenny Bowker for speaking her mind and Sako Tanaka for wishing for world peace. Beautiful. Love that. Jackie Raill has always been my Shero, which is what I wrote in the
Mm-hmm.
chat. Gwen says Beth, Gabs, Ruby, and Colette for founding WICS.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Big Sheroes up here. Gwen, because she has the ability to look deeper and her mind travels further.
Yeah.
Gabs for stepping up and leading at such a young age.
Thanks.
That is in Spanish, so I'm going to guess that is not for me. Megan
But
says,
we
my
could
mom,
say gracias.
gracias. Yes. My mom, superpower is her compassion, faith, and ability to love anyone and
Mm.
everyone. Betty Glover, community leader. She was my mentor. Colette for having the courage to make this a reality. I have many Sheroes in my professional life, my mentor, Natalia, and Gwynn Powell, since I met her at ICF conferences with all the deep insights she has provided, the first two that come to mind. Kat Curry, Ruby Compton, Sheena Willebrandt, so many amazing Sheroes in the camp world. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And thank you, Kate, for helping me read those wonderful
My
Sheroes.
pleasure.
In the work that we're going to be doing today, I want us to hold those people in our hearts because in the work that we get to do, those people have helped us create those paths, but those younger versions of those people need us to help create paths as well. So, before we get into all of this, what is WICS? We know what ICF Academy is, but what is WICS? Well, WICS is a place where a gathering, a safe enough space where camp professionals that are women and those that have lived experiences of being a girl can learn, share, and feel empowered. And the hope is to be able to bring that to the outside world. And it's a summit. And we went with the summit. Why a summit over a conference? Well, because a summit is a place where we can create a collective goal together, and it's only achieved when we all arrive, and so that's why it's not called a WIC, a Women in Camp conference. It's called WICS because collectively we want to get to our common goal. So with that, our plan for today is we're going to learn a little bit from our very own Beth Allison, the Women in Camp Summit origin story, which not many people have heard. We're going to talk about how to create a participant-centered programming, and we're going to learn from WICS on how we did that, so that perhaps you might at home get some inspiration for your staff training or even holding an event like WICS. Third, Shero Talks led by Kate, which is how to host brave conversations, which again is really important when it comes to staff training, but also if we want to hold an event, and looking to the future, what's next. So I'm going to invite Kate back to the stage, just chat a little bit more about the space that we're going to be joining in collectively today.
Mhm. Yeah, I definitely wanted to bring up one little thing about our time together before we go diving right in. And it's also something that we encourage people to do when they're hosting an event based on the framework that we are presenting today. So, like, first of all, we want to remind everyone that um, typically, of course, the Women in Camp Summit and our pop events are for women. They're by women. They're about women. Though we do try to be as all-encompassing with the word woman as we can be. But today we're very grateful to have the opportunity to share our WICS experience with everybody. So please don't run away just because you don't identify as a woman or didn't grow up as a girl. In this space, everybody is welcome, as long as you agree to keep one simple thing in mind, which is that we are creating a kind space. I'll explain a little bit what I mean by that. So you might have heard of the concept of a safe space. And a safe space is a place or environment in which a person or a group of people can feel confident that they won't be exposed to any discrimination, criticism, harassment, or emotional physical harm. Realistically, those don't really exist. You can't predict people's thoughts and behaviors in a way that would allow for someone to speak without anyone reacting in a way that might be received as negative. You may have also heard of the concept of a brave space. And a brave space is one where participants feel comfortable learning, sharing, and growing. They're inclusive and they try to be all encompassing, with a lot of opportunity for intersectionality to come into play. But those can also be exhausting because folks who are from equity deserving communities have to be brave all the time. They're constantly being asked to educate more privileged people they interact with. They're held to higher standards at work than their privileged peers, and they're constantly on guard for keeping their reactions in check. So what we would like to aim for in this space and in all WIC spaces is a kind space. We want participants to be responsible for themselves, their intentions, their words, their actions, and enter the space with a willingness to examine differences between people with care and with love. They have to be willing to exercise humility and enter conversations with kindness and genuine curiosity. The humility part is recognizing that we don't know everything, and we know that we don't know everything, but the only way that we're going to know more than nothing is by talking to each other. And the kindness and curiosity is what makes those conversations work. So what that all means is when a person is telling you their story, telling you about their experience, even if it's not at all the same as what you might have experienced in your life. We want you to listen with belief in your heart and react with childlike wonder in your brain to recognize that it is what they've experienced in their life and you could learn something new from them. So, speaking of storytelling, to kick us off with our
Ooh,
first story of today, we're going to hear from Beth Allison, one of the founders of the Women in Camp Summit, and she's going to tell us a little bit about how WICS came to be.
thanks,
Good
Beth.
morning, or good evening, or good afternoon, depending on where you are around the globe. I'm Beth Allison of Go Camp Pro, and I'm one of the founders of the Women in Camping Summit. I can still see us all seated around the table outside in downtown Disney during ACA Nationals in 2018. 6 women and my husband Travis, who sat very quietly and just listened as we discussed, lamented, complained, and celebrated all that women go through in our industry. I truthfully don't remember who mentioned that we needed a conference first, but we all readily agreed. We quickly moved into dream mode about what it could look like, how it could happen, what we needed to talk about. And the excitement was palpable for just an idea. And then Colette Marquardt, the executive director of ACA Illinois, spoke up. And she really spoke up. Although I don't remember whose idea it was, I will never forget Colette saying, if we have it in Illinois, I'll underwrite it. We'll cover the insurance, the registration, and we can have my staff do some of the work. It was one of the bravest things I've ever heard. Colette stepped forward and put all the wheels in motion despite any backlash that might come her way. And it did. Oh, it did. We heard a lot of, who are you to run a conference? When will the Men in Camping conference be? To which we'd always answer, whenever you run one. And it's a great idea because you guys have a lot to talk about. No, we weren't sanctioned by a huge camping body, but that's okay. We all love working from the ground up anyway. And we decided very quickly it couldn't just be a conference, it had to be a summit, a gathering where influential people and specialists on a particular topic want to address and share and collaborate on how to move forward with projects, research, and intentional discussion. So we made a list, as good camp people always do, about what we needed, how we were going to pull it off, and the order in which we needed to get it all done. It was exhausting even to think about. We figured we were nearing the end of conference season that year, so it would have to wait until next year at the very earliest. And just like bravely stepping out and offering to host the summit, Colette also knew we need to get it started ASAP. It takes about 9 months to grow a baby. We grew ours in less than that. We picked a date and jumped in with both feet, and we've never looked back. There are so many memorable moments for me from all of our WICS summits, both in person and online during the pandemic. I loved the sensation and butterflies I felt as the very first participants came through the door at Pheasant Run in 2018. I was hit both by my excitement and theirs. Something truly special was happening. I loved watching the faces of young women as they listened to our legacy panel in 2019 of true camping legends and heard stories of their struggles, successes, and advice. I truly love the bond we felt as we mourned together the loss of the summer of 2020, together online one evening, and allowed ourselves the opportunity to grieve and to do so supported by one another. I love seeing the faces from all over the world on my computer screen during our ICF panel during COVID. That was remarkable. But I think my favorite memory will always be all of us gathered in the ballroom our very first year when we learned the lyrics and music to Milk's I Can't Keep Quiet, and we sang it all together. Looking around the room at those tear-stained faces of our sisters cemented for me the fact that it was time, past time, that we did something like this. I can't keep quiet. Oh, no, no.
Thanks, Beth. I remember that moment, the I can't keep quiet moment, and I also remember being at the Disney lunch that we had, and there was something that I think came over us uh, to do something to make a change, but that wasn't necessarily the case in my experience about 15 years ago. I remember being at camp fairs when the internet was very present, but people still wanted to meet the camps and camp directors in person. So we went to camp fairs with a whole bunch of other camps, and we would see families. And Jackie always said to us that worked at the booth, we're not trying to sell Camp Waro to campers. We're trying to help families find the right camp for them. And that was our mission. Maybe Waro was a good place for them, but maybe another camp would be better. And that was our goal. And I remember often, almost every 10th family, there would be a parent saying something along the lines of, well, you're not one of those feminist camps that hate men, are you? And I would have to pause a little bit, and I would tell half-truths, which would be, no, we don't hate men. I never addressed the feminist issue or the feminist point. And it felt awkward, but we did think that maybe their kids would like our camp. And so I didn't lie, I just gave little half-truths. And the word feminist can have a negative thought. It's associated with men hating. It's associated with unreasonableness. It's associated with not being funny is another one. And so when I was actually sharing this story at a dinner with a bunch of friends and new acquaintances, one person said, "Oh, so ask me, well, is your camp a feminist camp?" And I stopped and paused, and I thought, well, actually, I think all camps are feminist camps, in my opinion. I've worked personally at Camp Nominang, which is an all-boys camp, and their young men, staff members, are at the forefront of caregiving, of listening, of validating, of creating space. I've worked at co-ed camps where the women were teaching young men how to solo portage a canoe. And then at my camp, which is primarily all girls, where we get up on stage and we, as we say in French, joue la clown, or we are the clowns on stage. There is equal rights and fair treatment at camp. We get to play all of the roles, and our kids get to see us in all of those roles. I think all camps, personally, are feminist camps, in my humble opinion. But just because maybe our intent in the camping industry is to create an equal space for all, it doesn't mean that it is a space that everyone feels like they belong. The intent for this to happen is not enough to equal results. And that's what we're here for. We're here for results where everybody feels like they are welcomed. When we started to announce that there was going to be a Women in Camp Summit, we really were doing it because we felt that women needed a space on their own to have meaningful conversations and be vulnerable about the work that we do. We know that in camping that a lot of the times, especially the higher you go up, the less you are surrounded by people. We have singular experiences, men and women, in camping. Some of us are just 2 employees full year round, and then we have 80, 90, 100 employees in the summer. But those other months can be a little bit lonely. We wanted a place where we could talk about our shared experiences and learn from that. The backlash, we anticipated a little bit, but I didn't realize how much this would be upsetting to people, men and women alike. These are just things that people had said to me when sharing that we were going to create a Women in Camp Summit, or when I wasn't even sharing that, but people would approach me at conferences. So why do women need their own event? Innocent question, but the tone behind it was quite aggressive. Where is the men in Camp Summit? To what Beth answered is go for it. I think it's an important thing to discuss is your experiences. Um, After one session that I was leading that didn't have to do with the Women in Camp Summit, I had a young man that came to talk to me about the Women in Camp Summit. Other people wanted to talk to me about my session, but he took up a lot of the space and the time. He was upset that he felt that men didn't have a quote unquote private space anymore. When I had another session to go to, I explained to him I couldn't continue this conversation. Maybe we could do it at a later date. But he followed me all the way to the bathroom and waited for me outside the bathroom, clearly upset and frustrated. When I put on my name tag, thanks to camp, I have a voice, I was told by very well-intentioned people, you don't need a voice, you have camp. And this dismissal is sort of one of the reasons why it's important to have these type of spaces. I also understand why some people might get upset by this notion. No one wants to hear that people don't feel safe at camp. It's what we all work towards, creating a safe space where kids can be themselves. That's what our collective goal is. And if we want to create a more inclusive space at camp, we need to understand that camp magic doesn't happen for everyone. I learned that lesson at a young age. I had the privilege of growing up at a summer camp. My parents own and run a summer camp. And I saw people come to camp and have that camp magic feeling on the third day of camp. They met their best friends. It allowed them to be the type of person they wanted to be. And nothing in their eyes could go wrong at camp. They truly got hit with the camp magic. But I also saw, because I was part of the family business, the other side of camp, where sometimes this wasn't an inclusive space. Wasn't a place where everybody felt welcome. And that helped me understand that camp magic has to be more than just that saying. On the first day of camp, I teach all of our staff that our goal is to create camp magic. But what does that intentionally look like? For me, it's when a camper feels like they belong to something special. That is our number one goal when we are trying to create camp. And we have to understand, how do we make people feel like they belong? And not every person needs the same thing to feel like they belong. That's the work that we get to do. So camp magic is really the work of making people feel like they belong to something special. And the something special is your camp. So our camps are not weatherproof from the outside world. I think sometimes we like to think that we go into camp and all the bad stuff stays out. I know I like to think that too. But the truth is that we absorb the good and we absorb the harmful. And the more we are informed in the micro harmfuls that happen, the more we can create a safer space for our campers and for our staff members. And so that is why, for me, being intentional and doing this type of work, though it can be hard and it can be challenging, I like to have the mindset that we get to show our campers and staff that here together we can practice doing better. Camp is truly a microcosm. And so when we get the outside world into our camp, we can plan intentionally what we want to do to make everybody feel like they belong. And our campers can be part of that process, and so can our staff members. We can literally together practice doing better. Now, the first step of doing all of this is acknowledging our privilege. And I'd like to invite my good pal to the stage to chat a little bit more. Hi, Kate. I just wanted to chat with you a little bit more about privilege, because I think sometimes when we talk about privilege, sometimes like feminism, it's scary a little bit. We have our own prejudices a little bit, biases towards it. Can you tell me in layman's terms, what is prejudice?
What is prejudice or what is privilege?
Oh, privilege, sorry.
Privilege. Yes. Okay. I was like,
Yes.
what is prejudice? Well, I
Yeah.
mean, I can go on a whole Jane
That's
Austen tangent.
another, yes, yes,
So I think that privilege, like in the very basic terms, privilege is an unfair advantage or benefit some people have because of their social group. And, that could be their social economic status, there could be their skin color, it could be their language that they speak. There's a lot of different things that go into like what a social group is. Right? It's an unfair advantage that they have.
that's right. And those can be divided up into so many layers.
Hmm.
Do you feel like maybe sharing maybe one of your privileges that you might have?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so you mentioned that like one of your privileges was that your parents owned the camp that
Yes,
you went to and worked at and all these different things. My
yes.
parents were comfortably middle class, as they like to call themselves.
Mm,
So they could afford to send me to camp.
yes.
So they got to pick one of the best camps in the entire country,
Mm.
let alone world, which is Camp Waro. They sent me to Waro. I was
Yeah,
very, very privileged to be able to go to Waro because we could afford it. And I know I've heard you say before, like if you had not had your parents as the owners working there, you wouldn't necessarily have afforded to be able to go
no,
to camp. And I know my parents did like they scrimped and they saved, but there were definitely folks at Waro who were quite a bit higher tax brackets than I was, and there
yes,
was also some that were a little bit lower tax brackets. We're very privileged as well at Waro to be able to offer like a fund to assist campers in coming to camp on like a
yes,
campership scholarship. Um, but also privilege wise, um, I know that like the camping industry as a whole is pretty white. That is
yes.
something that I've definitely noticed when we've going around to conferences and like interactions between camping professionals. There's a lot of white folks in the room.
Yes, in Canada and the US, it's predominantly white, and I think that the when we're talking about privilege, it's understanding that when we know our privilege and we understand maybe what other people don't have as a privilege, then we can make adjustments to create space so that they do feel like they belong. And the Women in Camp Summit is it's not a perfect team, it's not a perfect organization, and in our leadership team we are a white group of individuals. We do have some intersectionalities, of course, and part of our participants and our volunteers, of course, we have people of color. But what's important to understand is that because we are primarily a team of white people, what are some of our blinders up? What are some of the privileges that we have? And I'll tell you what I've learned in this process is that as somebody that is privileged in the sense that I did grow up at a summer camp, I got to be in nature. My parents were around a lot when we were growing up. These are all wonderful privileges. I can also say that sometimes when I'm confronted with my privilege, I can get a little bit defensive. And what we want to do is we want to flip that defensive into I get to. And I'll just tell you a little bit of the things I get to do. I got to learn from my staff when I was maybe not aware of some of my privileges. And I got to learn how to apologize quite often in front of my staff. And I got to role model what that looks like to take responsibility and take accountability. And because I get to learn from them and because I get to course correct, I also get to create a safer space for my kids and my campers. Every day we're growing towards that mission. And I get to in a way create camp magic, because the more I learn, the less my defensive goes down, the more I keep my eye on the ball, which is creating a safer space for people, the easier it is. And I really believe that that's the important piece when it comes to this type of work.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think thanks so much, Kay. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it. I think that that what I'd like to show you is that within the camp summit, we put on our what do we get to do for these women, and what would these women benefit from, and really centered them at the care of the summit. And here are some things and some examples that we did to really center our participants so they felt heard and they felt seen. So, one of my favorite things is the spaces that were created. My favorite space is the recharging station, which had a sign. These are some examples of the posters that are up at a WICS summit. And recharging station. Here's a little spot to plug in or unplug. Basically, you get a little alone time and charge your phone. Maybe you want some quiet time around people and do a puzzle. There's also a buddy bench. There's also comfort level buttons that we gave out. So would you like a high five? Would you like a hug? Would you like 6 feet away? We could wear that. In the morning, we had little morning motivators. So some stretching mindfulness, and also, of course, listening to 90s boy bands, which is extremely important. So welcoming our participants and thinking about them and maybe their anxieties coming to a new space. How do we make them feel like they can and create a variety of spaces? The other thing that was really important to me, and this is where I actually have a lot of privilege, is that when I would walk down the hallway at a conference, because of my parents and because of the camp directors before my parents that owned our camp, they really believed in going to conferences, volunteering, and making connections and learning from others. And so because of that social network, I would be in the hallway and I might see somebody like Jane McCutcheon, and she would take 5 minutes to chat with me. And that hallway conversation meant everything to me. That's a privilege I had. Maybe Jane would speak with anybody, but I felt confident to talk to her. So, excuse me, we created mentor chats. Does anybody else have the cold that I have? It's going around. Kate, would you mind explaining mentor chats and
For sure, for sure.
coaching?
Yeah. So mentor chats is it's exactly what Gabs was talking about, being able to like walk up to somebody in the hallway and ask them to be your mentor or ask them some advice. That can be really daunting for a lot of people. So mentor chats is an opportunity where people are putting themselves in the position to say, I will mentor anybody, come and ask me anything. So we had I think about 5 or 6 women who had been in the camping industry for a while and were offering themselves up as mentors to anyone who wanted to sign up. So throughout the entire summit, you could sign up for a 15, 20-minute chat block with one of these amazing women, and just talk about anything that you wanted to talk about. And it got you an opportunity to get FaceTime with one of these camp leaders. I remember at my first Women in Camp Summit, I signed up for a chat with Beth just because I think that she's the coolest person in the world and I want to be her when I grow up. So it was a really, really wonderful opportunity for me to just shoot the breeze a little bit. It was wonderful. The other opportunity that we have for mentorship that I also benefited from, I got to be a speaker at the last Women in Camp Summit in 2023, and we offer a speaker coaching program. So again, this is something that we encourage everyone to sign up for, and it's available to everybody. Not everybody who comes to the Women in Camp Summit needs speaker coaching because they've been speakers before, but we really want to give the opportunity for folks to have their first speaking engagement with us, and we'll walk them through the whole process. So someone who is an experienced speaker will, help you run through your presentation, help you figure out what you want to put on your slides, help you figure out the tone that you want to set. And we have a whole package of teaching tools that helps a new speaker figure out how to put together their first speaking engagement. So I found it extremely beneficial. It helped me to streamline my next speaking engagement. When I was at a different conference, I just took the same package and worked through the same toolkit, sadly without someone next to me to be able to walk with me side by side, but it was an extremely useful mentoring opportunity for me.
Thanks, Kate.
Mhm.
I might keep you on standby.
No worries.
I think that the coaching piece and the mentorship piece um, is an example of support. And in leadership opportunities, I want to draw our eye to the middle box where it says "Lift Your Voice," live sessions. So we wanted to get as many speakers as possible from our community to participate. But what we what we learned and we knew might happen, but we also saw it, is that a lot of women want to learn, but don't feel necessarily that they have something to share, that they're not at a professional level enough to share. And there are statistics out there for that men in a lot of ways will apply for a job over women that would apply for the same job, even if they have the same qualifications. So we're like, how do we encourage applications? How do we encourage people that do have something to say? So obviously the coaching was really important, but we decided to create Lift Your Voice sessions, which are just 20-minute sessions, so a little bit less intimidating. You still get a coach, but as a first-time speaker, it's a wonderful experience. And then as a listener, in a session block, I would get to go to 3 different sessions back to back of live sessions. Then we had our typical development sessions that are approximately an hour. And then we had intensive, which was more than that. So in these realms, we're really trying to center everybody's experience from the participants, but also the speakers that are coming. We also had villages and have villages where you're assigned to a group, and every lunch you get together. And we have prompted conversations that some are funny, but some are also reflective. There's village leaders, and so they have somebody that supports them in leading those conversations. So all of these pieces come together as a whole experience. We want everybody that's part of the Women in Camp Summit to be growing, to be learning, and be able to be vulnerable when necessary, because this work does require a little bit of vulnerability. The last piece that I would like to say is that I'm personally a graphic designer, and within the camp industry, as an industry as a whole, a lot of the times we put our energy into our site, our facility, our staff training, our menu planning, the septic system, and the talking to parents that have annoying questions. But the aspect of the visual, what we look like on the screen, in paper, sometimes we want to get to it, but it's not always our priority. Well, for me, I always want, as camp people, to look professional. It can be fun, but I want us to look professional. Now, with working with a group of women, similarly, women will put their needs, to the side a little bit. So when we're hosting events, we don't want to spend money necessarily on fancy posters, or we could do it by hand. We're always trying to do a little bit grassroots. With the Women in Camp Summit, it was really important to us to make it feel professional and approachable. So we worked really hard on what our name tags looked like, what the posters looked like, what the booklet looked like, all of it to be inviting, but to say what you do matters. And that was something we wanted people to feel through and through. We had also fidget baskets that are at tables. We also had care kits in bathrooms. Everything around our conference center was thought of by women for women. Okay, I'm going to invite you back on the stage.
Hello, I'm Gwynn Powell. I'm an active volunteer with the Women in Camp Summit and with the International Camping Fellowship. Prior to attending the Women in Camp Summit, I truly thought that the world we lived in had, for the most part, moved beyond the need to have a dedicated space for the amplification of women's voices. Sadly, I was wrong. The WICS organizing team is so thoughtful and so intentional that every detail is crafted to connect people and build community. It is truly remarkable. I have attended so many different conferences and never experienced this type of space before. WICS is able to allow people to set down the facade and simply be. To be brave, be vulnerable, be creative, be pragmatic, be honest, to vent safely about the discrimination, dismissal, and oppression that are experienced, and then move forward with support, with coping mechanisms and strategies and action steps to change the situation. It gave me awareness, empathy, and pause. The acts of bravery that I saw in the stories that were shared inspired me to pay closer attention and to reach out to others. WICS is the people, the questions, the space for reflection, the ideas, the support. WICS is inspirational.
Having women in camp has been, I've had a lot of role models, and there's been a lot of people that have been there to support me. And as a kid growing up and feeling very anxious and not like I belonged anywhere, having women be like, hey, you do belong in this space, and giving me the space to like grow and show the types of leadership. In my camp, almost everybody is female, and it helps really show that we can come together.
Hi, my name is Lydia, and I am very passionate about the Women in Camp Summit because the folks there are incredible, and so are the folks at ACA Illinois. They're a group of the most loving, supportive, inclusive, and empowering people because there's a difference between including people and creating that space and also empowering people to do something within that space and have tough conversations and go out and create those spaces for other people. So yeah, that's why I'm passionate about this group.
I'm eager and excited to connect with other women that are in the camp field and to continue to build upon and empower our youth and young girls and other women to be in leadership positions.
The first time that I went to a Women in Camp event, it was almost by accident. Normally I'm the sort of person who, if I see girl power, something's in pink, I walk the other way. When I showed up at my first summit, it was the most inclusive, welcoming community that felt really designed to cheer for its members, to advocate for professional development, and to advocate for us achieving our dreams. I don't come to Women in Camp because it's about women. I come to Women in Camp because it's about making each other better.
I think it is incredibly important to support women in camping, to show young girls that we can be in a profession that has historically been male dominated, and just in general to have women supporting women.
Hey guys, it's Danny. One of my favorite parts about WIC is just getting to connect with other women camp pros in the industry and see all the good work that they are doing and collaborating together to make camp a better place. Gwynn Powell shared a really cool quote last summit that has really stuck with me, but she talked about just making the grass greener in the areas that she could control, and I think that really sums up the work of all the women within the WIC connections. They are working hard to make their camps better places and make the industry even better for our kiddos, which has just been really special to be a part of. And I'm excited to hopefully have some new faces joining us soon.
Thanks for that video, and thanks Alexia for editing it, and thanks Gwen for collecting all of those videos. One of the more powerful pieces for me at a WIC Summit is our Shero talks, and it is a place that it's something we do on the second day. So we try to build that connection, build that trust, so that we can be brave, have those vulnerable conversations. And this is something that we're hoping that you'll do back in your country and in your area, because we don't want WICS to just happen in Chicago, though that is wonderful. We want it to happen other places. So I'm going to invite Kate back on to explain a little bit how you can do your very own Shero talk.
Thank you, Gabs. All right, so Shero Talks, this is something that we have the framework built out for WICS pop-ups, but we also do use it at the summit. So all of the stuff that I'm talking about in this how-to guide is actually pulled directly from our website, which we are going to talk about later. So what does Shero stand for? It stands for share, hear, empower, raise, and own. This is part of what I sort of see as the democratization of the Women in Camp Summit. This was something that I don't know whose brainchild it was. I want to say Ruby's, but anyway, Ruby led it very, very well the first time that I went to a Women in
Yes, it
Camp
was
Summit.
Ruby's.
It was Ruby's. She's a
Yeah.
genius. Yeah. So the Shero Talks are an opportunity for everybody who comes to the summit or everyone who comes to a pop-up event to participate in picking what we're going to talk about. So the topics are chosen and submitted by the folks who are actually in the room. So the basic formula is that everybody writes down their topics, we vote on them, there's conversation, and we have some guidelines for how that conversation should go. So the first step of the process is everybody gets a bunch of cue cards or sticky notes. You can submit a bunch of topics that you can think of, or if you can only think of one, then you can submit one. But everybody writes a question or a topic on each of their cards, and different topics, different cards, and they write their name on the back of that card. Then you stick them up on a wall or you lay them out on a table. And we like to play music when we give quiet time because it helps people think. So we put on some music and give everyone the chance to walk around quietly and look at every single one of the topics that has been posted on the wall or on the table. And then the next thing that you'll do is you'll give everybody 5 sticky dots or 5 stickers, or use the honor system and a pen and say you have 5 votes. And you are going to vote for the topic or topics that you most want to talk about in this next hour, hour and a half, however long you have. So everyone can take their 5 votes and decide how they want to lay them out. They can put all 5 votes on the same topic if they feel really, really passionate that this one needs to get picked, or they can spread them out to a few different ones. And then the person who is facilitating will select the topics based on which cards have the most votes. The number of topics that you discuss over the course of the time that you have will depend on, first of all, how much time do you have together and how many participants you have going. So when we do this at the Women in Camp Summit, we have potentially over 150 people in the room. So we need to pick quite a few topics so that these small group discussions can be laid out. I have a little sample for us to try. We're going to do this in, I think, an easier fashion than annotation. This is what a sample of the wall could look like. Now imagine that you have, we'll call it 2 votes because there's only 6 topics. You have 2 votes to submit, picking from, we'll say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's like 1, 2, 3 at the top and then 4, 5, 6 at the bottom. Tell me what your 2 votes are for the topics that we should be discussing. Pop them in the chat right now. Imagine you have 2 little sticky dots and you're deciding that we want to talk about 2 different things. Okay, so Cheryl has decided that we want to talk about gender roles at co-ed camps and neurodiversity in women. Alexia wants to talk about neurodiversity as well. Woohoo! And how to get a mentor. Beth wants to talk about how do you stay safe when traveling solo and neurodiversity. Colette wants to talk about traveling and mentors. JB wants to talk about asking my boss for a raise and getting a mentor. Maria wants to talk about neurodiversity and travel. Stay safe when travel. Yes. Okay. Okay. So I'm seeing some themes. It looks like if we were going to go about having our own Shero talk, we would be talking about staying safe while traveling solo and how to get a mentor. So look at that. In 30 seconds, I can decide what are the topics that we're going to discuss as a group. It can be that quick, I promise. So the next step is going to be conversation time. So the person whose topics got selected, they are going to start off the discussion. So you might have it laid out at tables around a room. You might just pick some corners of the space that you're in. But that person whose topic was selected is going to start the discussion off. So they're going to read out their submission and maybe provide some context, because sometimes it's challenging on that teeny little cue card to put everything together. Gabs, can you switch the slide for me, please? Thank you. So they'll read their submission, they'll provide some context, and then the group can ask some clarifying questions. So maybe they want to know a little bit more about the context that they're coming from. Maybe they have some of their own things that they want to sneak in and say, I think this is slightly related to this topic. Can we add this to the conversation? And then it's time to share ideas. So maybe you have some ideas, some suggestions, some stories to share of like, oh yeah, I think I have some advice. Or maybe it's just going to be everybody sort of passing around what if scenarios or possible solutions to whatever this dilemma or question this person has. And then towards the end, the topic presenter is going to summarize what they feel like they've learned. So you can give a little like 1 minute, 2 minute warning before the end of the time for discussion, and the folks will take a moment to say, okay, let's recap. What have we learned in this conversation today? Next slide, please, Gabs. So my suggestion is that you plan for about 10 to 15 minutes per topic and then move to the next. So usually when we do Shero Talks at WICS, obviously the facilitation takes part of an hour's time slot. So we usually only get to 2, maybe 3 topics in the course of an hour. But it is really important to have multiple topics for each time slot, with the number depending on group size, so that participants can choose to move between topics if they don't feel like the one that they started out in is necessarily giving them what they thought they wanted to talk about in this time. That's also a part of the democratization of the process. Everyone gets to choose what they are going to spend their focus and their energy on. It's really, really important to respect confidentiality for what's shared in the space. Anything that's shared in that space has to stay in that space so that everyone feels very safe to speak openly. And again, sort of using those kind space reminders, you're using active listening, so making sure that you're giving full attention when others are speaking. You're using that confidentiality so that everyone feels comfortable to share, and they're not going to have their stories shared outside of the people that they're choosing to share to. And respect and kindness, approaching every conversation with empathy, understanding that belief in their heart that that's their lived experience, and the curiosity in your brain to know that this is something that you could learn from them. So that's pretty much the guidelines to Sheroing. And Gabs, we're going to go back to you. You're on mute. Yep.
Yes, that's how we know it's a live show. I think that when we're talking about Shero Talks, can you help our audience, our ICF Academyers, to understand, what can they do with this? So I think the conversation piece is amazing. The structure is fantastic. Why are we sharing this with everybody?
We want you to steal this model.
Yes. Okay.
We want you to take it away, and we're not hoarding this wealth for just the women in camp. We know, like, as we were mentioning about our privilege, and we know the fact that the women in camp leadership team and the camp industry as a whole is pretty white. We may or may not be addressing the needs of people of color. We may or may not be addressing the needs of some other disadvantage that we don't personally have. We'll always do our best, but we don't know everything. So we would love for this model to be used in other communities. I would love for an LGBTQ group to take this model and talk about the issues that they have as LGBTQ camp pros. I would love for people of color to get together, or maybe, just the Black community is going to take this and talk about the problems that they have as Black camp professionals. I find that this model just really builds community well, no matter what community you're coming from. And I think that, like, it works for women. It's not just for women. Anyone can use this. Anyone can take this. You could take it to your camp and you could have it be a model for how you want to discuss things in staff training. Maybe you want to have your staff members get together and talk about the issues that they're facing as young camp professionals. I don't know. The topics are going to be theirs to come up with.
That's awesome. And we want to stick around because Kate is going to actually show you and give you the handout. So yes, she did a beautiful presentation, but the Women in Camp Summit, we want everybody to be successful. So Kate's going to walk through all the tools in a minute, but we do have a little video to share with you.
Hi everyone, my name is Luciana from Venezuela and I'm a coordinator at the Buenas Camp. I've seen camp be an opportunity for girls and young women to take leadership roles and to be empowered into being confident, assertive, and a role model to others. For me personally, working at camp has been an impactful experience that has helped me grow into the adult I am today and keeps helping me grow into a successful professional. So I wish for future generations, especially for young lady campers, to have even better opportunities and a safe space at camp, just like the one I've experienced, so they can thrive as leaders, not only at their camps and our organizations, but throughout all the different aspects of their lives.
So it's great to have every camper be able to look at someone on staff who they identify with, that they see themselves with, especially someone who's happy and healthy and surviving, especially as a queer woman, that there's kids who can look at me and be like, oh, like maybe I'm like that person, you know? So I think it's really important to have a diverse staff so that every camper has a role model they can look up to.
I hope that the next generation of women in camps can have a much easier time than I did. I dream of a world where we don't have to constantly overcome the challenges that women in our field have to face. I want women in camps to have a chance to fully use their skills and talents without any limits. I hope the support and inspiration I have found become the foundation for a future where everyone in camping feels welcome and has equal opportunities.
I hope the next generation of lady campers continue the job we've been doing up to now. They continue working towards equality in the camp business. I wish in the future we don't have to talk about inclusivity because it's all naturally done. And I hope that we do respect nature as we've always done, but looking towards the future and making sure that we leave camps for the following generations.
My hope for the next generation of lady camp professionals is to step into your power. I noticed when I was running recruitment for American Village camps in France for 15 years, I noticed that we had a ton of female applicants to be counselors, but fewer to be in leadership positions. Now I'm talking a very marked difference, and over 15 years. It had nothing to do with selection criteria, nothing to do with competency, nor commitment. So please step into your power. If you're competent, if you're committed, if you've got skills, believe in yourself, you should be running a program or a camp.
My name is Martine. I think that having women in camp is important just for representation. I think that having women of color in camp is important for representation as well. There are not a lot of us in the camp world. I think there needs to be more of us in the camp world because it is so big. And we are touching so many lives, and we just want to be sure that we can touch everyone because camp is a place for everyone. And I always say there's a camp for everyone. You just have to find the right camp for you. And that works when we have people that are inclusive, that look like everyone.
If you can see it, you can be it. And that is what we need in the camp industry. But we won't see it unless we create that welcoming space that we've been talking about, that space of belonging. And and what I love about my job, my career, is that I get to work towards always creating that space and learning how to do that. There's a while ago, our camp has been around for over 100 years. I mentioned my father and mother owning and running the camp. My father's truly a master carpenter, and he was maintaining one of our over 100-year-old buildings, our dining room. And one of our alumni, a dear alumni of ours, I think we all have one that has been around almost as long as the camp has been. And she came in to the dining room, and along the bottom of the dining room, there was wood at the top, and then along the bottom, there was cardboard to fill in the gaps, and it was painted green. And he was taking out the cardboard and putting in the planks of wood. And Leslie said, "Oh, Dawn, no, not the cardboard," because she was heartbroken, because this was the cardboard that was there since she was a child. And he looked at her and said, "Leslie, Mabel Jamison and Ferna Halliday never intended this to be cardboard. They always wanted it to be wood. They just didn't have the time or the resources to do it. I'm just finishing what they intended to do." And I think our camps are a lot like that on a social level. Our camps might have had some programs that we don't do anymore because it doesn't make everybody feel safe. There might be some names of cabins and tents that we've changed because they're no longer inclusive or appropriate. We know better now. We have the resources. The people that came before us always intended for our camps to make everyone feel like they belong. And we can't do it alone. We need help. We need people to not only stand beside us, but to roll up their sleeves. And so I'm chatting with us as allies, not just men, but white women, towards women of color, towards queer people. As allies, Kate and I came up with a fun little acronym, as I love to wear beaded bracelets at my camp. Just remember beads. Believe our stories, educate yourself, accompany others, donate, and speak up. So believe it's not an oppressed person's responsibility to demonstrate that they're being oppressed. It is the privileged person's responsibility to listen and to act and to remove that oppression. Believe. Educate yourself. I remember somebody saying to me, "I can't tell a woman that she looks nice anymore." And I'm like, listen, I always like hearing that I look nice. Thank you. But understand the context of why maybe some people are saying, please don't do that anymore. Learn your history. And for women, it's never, a lot of us, it hasn't been just because it's a compliment. There has been something else that follows after that has made some people feel unsafe. Learn the context. Educate yourself. I was once at a wedding where somebody was asking me many questions about women's rights, and my partner had to step in and say, she gets paid good money to educate people. Go on Google top 10 reasons or top 10 books I should read. Listen to podcasts. Listen to audiobooks. Accompany others. Who are you following on social media? How many of them do they look like you? How many of them don't? Start following people that maybe don't have shared experiences as you do so you can learn. Bring a friend, potentially an ally, to other events. Just walk sometimes. Listen. Donate your time, your finances, and your space. We've had quite a few men that have said, I want to help out. And a lot of the times I say, what do you got to offer? Let me know. We need your support. Some of us are tired, as you are as well. But when we do this work together, it's just so much lighter. And lastly, we aren't in all of the rooms. So when we're not in the room, it is a privilege to be quiet. but it is also a privilege to speak up on the behalf of the ones that aren't there. And it's a responsibility. Advocate for us. Ask who is missing. This is the moment we were waiting for. The handout, the spotlight, the only Kate Taylor.
Thanks, Gabs. So obviously we had to shout out the fact that the Women in Camp Summit is going to be back again in 2026. We are so excited to have a brand new place. I don't remember what it is, so I'm going to have to look it up. I think it's close to Chicago O'Hare. I know that. It's a very accessible spot for any of our international friends to come and join us at the Women in Camp. Thank you, Colette, Crown Plaza, Chicago O'Hare. January 14th to 16th, 2026, we will be back in Chicago for another Women in Camp Summit for realsies. Gaz, can you throw up the next slide, please? If you want to have more information about anything that the Women in Camp Summit is putting on, make sure that you're on the ACA Illinois mailing list to receive updates as more information becomes available. We are, of course, also on Instagram and Facebook, so please follow us there. And we also have some pop-ups coming up. If you were at the ACA National, there already was one. There was a pop-up right there. We have all of these beautiful videos thanks to Gwynn from that pop-up event. There will be more pop-ups happening at Tri-State Camp Conference on March 12th and the New England Camp Conference on March 29th. And big thank you to Colette and Megan, who are in the call right now, to help us host those events. We also have a digital pop-up series that happens once a month, and it is next going to be happening on March 14th and then April 11th and May 9th. Again, thank you to Colette and Megan for hosting those. Woohoo, Cheryl's going to be in New England. If you would like to have the opportunity to host your own pop-up, you can head to our website at wicspodup.com. There's also a link from the main Women in Camp Summit page if you want to find it from there. If you want to learn a little bit more about the Women in Camp Summit as a whole and then get to the pop-ups, feel free. Next slide, please, Gabs. So we have a host application that you can fill out. We will get in touch with you to make sure that you understand what you're getting yourself into and giving you opportunities to be mentored through the process, of course. So throw in your application, and then you're going to choose a date and a location for your event, and then you're going to invite others to come. Next slide, please. Thank you. You have a couple of different formats. So one of the ways that you can host a pop-up is just between you and some friends. You can have 5 or 6 people and just have a little friend chat that's pretty non-structured conversation, but it is specifically putting aside time to get together and talk about being a woman in the camp industry in the format that we've laid out for you here. And then we have the Shero Talks. So in the toolkit, yes, next slide, please, Gabs. In the toolkit, you will have access to discussion topic samples that we have for both the friend chats and if you want to give some inspiration for Shero Talks, you can use that. We have an invitation email that you can copy and paste and throw right into your email newsletter list for anyone you want to invite to come to your session. And we have this whole layout of the Shero Talk format that I put in this webinar. So if you want to come back and rewatch the webinar for extra inspiration, feel free, but everything that you need is on the website in the toolkit. Next slide, please, Gabs. So don't forget, you can go to wicspodup.com or the womenincampsummit.com and learn more about what we have to offer. Back to you, Gabs.
Thanks so much, Kate. Really appreciate it. And just to let you know, those tools are available on Women in Camp Summit. You don't have to apply to just get inspired. You can see those tools. But if you want to host a pop-up, we want to help you out. If you want to just try a Shero Talk on your own, please do that. It is truly yours. I want to take a moment before I pass on the microphone to my good pal Gwynn. I want to take a moment to say thank you to the ICF Academy for allowing Kate and I to chat about the Women in Camp Summit. I really do believe that camps are in the most wonderful of positions to make the world a better place. And I do believe that we can practice this together. And I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking your precious time to be with us today and to learn about what we do. And we hope that some of it will inspire you to do something similar back in your neck of the woods. So I'm Gabs. Thanks again. And here's Gwen.
Thank you so much, Gabs and Kate, for leading this opportunity so that we can all learn more and be able to understand what's happening. We also want your feedback when you sign out of the Zoom. When you, quote, leave the room, you're going to get a link to a form, and we would really love to have your feedback because that's how we get better with every session. And we love the fact that this is an example of how you can do this for any ally group that you're talking about. So this is a model. And truly, they're sincere that they want us to be able to take it and use it and modify it. And we'd like to specifically thank the WICS founders, Beth, Gabs, and Ruby, and truly not possible without Colette and the ACA Illinois team. And so that's pretty awesome. We also want to thank Lucy and Robert for doing the live translation. It's so awesome that we have that happening. And you never know how you're going to get involved in ICF. Lucy's supervisor said, I think I have a fantastic staff member who can help this out. So then Lucy got involved. And just last week, Robert was at the ACA conference and said, I'd like to get involved with ICF. How can I help? So he ended up hosting our group from Mongolia to take them around town. And then I said, oh, and by the way, we need some translation help. He said, I'm there. So that's the way to get involved, is simply share what you can offer and we can help. So next slide, please. We also want to thank Alexia for doing all of the graphics and the video and the communication. You can learn more about what's happening with ICF by scanning this fancy QR code, or there's a link in the chat about the ICF newsletter. We promise you won't get spammed, but you will get fascinating news about every 6 weeks that'll keep you together. Next slide, please. And this is really what ICF is all about, is the connections. We don't have a huge hierarchy. We don't have a staff. We're people who want to connect people and be able to share together. And we use social media as a great way to be able to do that. So on the next slide, we have all the different social media ways that you can connect with LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook group, and Facebook page. And the reason we have 2 of those is so that you can add things to the Facebook group and be able to keep us connected. And next slide. We also have chat channels that are in WhatsApp and in Telegram and WeChat, so that you can be able to learn and talk in your own language. So we have it in English, Spanish, Russian, and Chinese, so that you can check those out. And next slide. We have the wonderful Pablo, who is in the house for this call. All of the things that we offer are typically free, and one of the ways that you can support ICF is by becoming a paid member. When you join the ICF newsletter, you're a free affiliate member. But if you'd like to put your money where your activities are, you can join. Their very reasonable prices that help support that, and also give you a discount for our international congresses, which the next one is coming up in China in October of 2026. So we're excited to be able to offer those to you. So next slide, please. I think it's a cool graphic to say thank you to all of you for coming, so you can enjoy that and watch that. And we hope that you will join us next time when we go on a camp tour of different camps in China to be able to learn more about what's happening with the camping movement in China.
Thanks again, everybody, and take care.